The warmest of festive greetings to you, and welcome to Merrily Ever Teaching! This is the podcast to help you enthrall your learners in a knowledge-rich curriculum using the best teaching method known to science, storytelling. To do this, we feature special guest educators who are passionately keen to empower your children. I am storyteller Chip Cahoon, and with me today is...
Hi, I'm Rob. I work in a small village school just in Buckinghamshire. I currently teach Key Stage 2, but have worked with all year groups up to Year 6.
Hi, I'm Toria, and I'm a Year 4 teacher at a large junior school on the south coast of England. I'm also the host of the Tiny Voice Talks podcast and author of the Tiny Voices Talk book.
I'm Caitlin. I'm a Year 1 teacher in a little village school at the opposite end of Buckinghamshire. I've appeared on Toria's podcast and I'm a contributor to her book.
Hi, I'm Nicola and I teach in a school in Southampton. I've taught all year groups and also worked with teachers at Teacher Training College.
Hi, I'm Bex. I have experience teaching across the primary schools, so all the way from early years to Year 6. I've also been a deputy head and I also train trainee teachers.
And today we are exploring what science we can teach with a Christmas folktale from Mexico. You can listen to the story by downloading our sister podcast, Fables and Fairy Tales, or search our website, epictales.co.uk, for The Forbidden Christmas. There you'll find a video of me telling the story that you can share with your children. And if you're an EPIC educator as of December 2022, you'll also get the story as a paperback, brightly illustrated by the fabulous Mario Coelho, hopefully in time for Christmas if you're really, really quick. Don't worry if you missed that though, as you can also order the book from any bookshop, including Amazon, and EPIC educators can access the ebook and full audiobook through the Epic Tales app. In fact, let's take a moment to thank everyone who's signed up to be an EPIC educator so far, because by doing so, you are also supporting this podcast, so we can keep sharing these off-the-shelf lesson ideas every single week. Right now, though, let's continue our discussion with Lola, Dom Pedro, and everybody here. And Bex, you are going to be talking about science with us. I thought we'd include you for the science episode because, of course, you are a horse owner. So I know that you have an extra special interest in this particular story. Have you thought of any animal-related science for us?
You know, it's not too animal related actually, which depressed me because obviously, as you know, I love animals and particularly horses and therefore donkeys. But there's some great science in there, but it's just not all to do with animals, I'm afraid. Lots of the ideas that I picked up, as like with most things, you can transfer it really easily across the school. So if you want to do some whole school Christmas projects, particularly thinking about, I think it was you, Caitlin, that said as our children are coming towards Christmas, they can concentrate for smaller and smaller periods of time. And sometimes the project-based approach is quite good for this time of year. So I was thinking about our younger learners, so our early years, Year 1 and Year 2 children. I really like the part of the story that one of the things that hit me straight away as I read it the first time through again was about growing vegetables. And I thought it'd be really, really nice to do some growing because throughout the Science National Curriculum in Key Stage 1, there's a lot about plants and growing things. And I was just thinking, actually, that'd be really good for our early years children when they have to take care of things and being responsible for different things. And I thought we could grow some vegetables, maybe have a bit of a vegetable growing competition. I've got absolutely no idea what vegetables grow at this time of year. You'd have to ask someone.
Especially not in Mexico.
No, especially not in Mexico. And maybe you could even make the climate similar to what can we grow here, what could we grow in Mexico, what's the similarities and differences to what foods we would grow at this time of year here and then in Mexico as well. So I thought that would be a really, really nice project because it would outlast the few weeks that you were probably studying the story, so you can then revisit it at a later time.
It's also a lovely opportunity to explain why we have Brussels sprouts, for example, as a staple of the Christmas dinner. It's because they tend to be winter vegetables. And maybe I don't know whether this would work at all, actually, because I don't have children of that age myself, but I don't know whether that might encourage them to try them if they know that it's a seasonal vegetable.
I always think like when we take our children away on residential, they're like their parents like they won't eat anything, and we're like they'll be so hungry that they won't care what's put in front of them, they'll just eat it. And they always do. And I know my friends who have got children, they say whenever they go around someone else's house they're much more willing to try something new. So I think it would be a really good opportunity to maybe cook some Christmas vegetables. Maybe say, okay, this is what we would harvest in the UK for Christmas celebrations, let's cook some. You could then look linking into the science of like changing states, which may be further up the school, but you could cook some of the vegetables. If you have forest school, take the children outside, get them actually cooking it on some little fires. But yeah, so talking about the different vegetables that we could harvest here and then in Mexico, and the things that we would need to have brought in as well, that would be really great. I love a Brussels sprout. I know that's not always a popular opinion, but I do love them.
Rob, though, you were looking a little bit dubious about the idea of kids wanting to eat everything.
Just Brussels sprouts.
Well, actually, given Bex has mentioned changing of states, one thing you could maybe also try is eating things raw, or giving children the opportunity to try things raw. Because I know when I was that age, I really hated cooked mushrooms, but I loved raw mushrooms. They do taste completely different. I think the same is true of Brussels sprouts, actually, because I mean, I like you, Bex, I very much enjoy my Brussels at Christmas. But a few years ago, one of the other directors here at Epic Tales brought some Brussels out of his fridge and literally just started tucking in, and it's like, yeah, do you want to try some? They have a very different texture, slightly different taste, and it does make it a very different eating experience. So it's a good chance to, I think, encourage your children to experiment with food, and maybe that way get some more vitamins and minerals inside them than they normally would.
Well, I was just thinking when you're speaking, like actually if you boil a vegetable, steam a vegetable, or eat it raw, their taste is completely different depending on how you actually cook them. So you could do a bit of steaming and boiling and eating them raw. And obviously Don Pedro wouldn't like a cooked carrot, would he? He'd like a raw carrot. So maybe eating some raw carrots and finding out which other vegetables animals might eat. And then for our younger learners as well, I was thinking about the forces involved in the story. So like obviously with the bridge being weak and obviously everybody having to heave. It reminded me of the enormous turnip story, you know, everybody getting involved and heaving. So actually getting some, particularly in early years, I think they'd really like to have a Don Pedro like stuck in in some mud and like trying to pull him out. And what happens if there weren't enough people to help, and how many people have we got to have to help get Don Pedro out, and what could we do if he was still stuck? What else could we go and get? Like I was thinking a tractor. Yeah. Just thinking about the whole area of forces, because I think the children would be really interested, particularly if you can get Don Pedro stuck for them to have to get him out.
I really like that idea. And like a lot of the ideas we've already had this week, that's something that you could really build into the telling of the story, and pause and have your entire science segment with some real knowledge-rich content without actually leaving the story, and embed all of that learning in there. So yeah, fantastic idea.
I love a good story pause. So those are kind of my two main ideas for Key Stage 1 learners. And obviously, like with continuous provision and in early years, and then moving up often into year 1 and then maybe sometimes year 2 as well, you can leave those things out for the children to experiment with and learn within their own time, and add different elements into the story as well. And then I was thinking at Key Stage 2, there's a lot of focus on planets and the solar system and light and how light travels and how we see things. This is ages 7 to 11. So I was thinking at looking at space and at different planets and at lights for our older learners. So looking at how light travels, and there's quite a lot about the eye, and it can be quite boring if you just teach about, no, this is the eye, this is how we see, but actually in a reason, in a context, actually the children will be really, really interested in it. And then thinking about the space, the whole area of like planets and stars, and what can we see when we go outside in the dark, what can we see with our eyes, then what can we see with the telescope, where are things. And there's some amazing apps out there that are free that the children can just use if they had it on an iPad, and they can just scan the sky and find out what they can actually see, and then it brings it up as the actual planet. So Jupiter you can often, and Saturn and Mars you can see with the naked eye, but they look like a star because obviously they're so far away. But Mars is obviously an orangey colour. So but then when you scan it with the app, you can then see that it brings up like the picture of the planet, so you can see them all in relation to one another, which I think is really, really fascinating, and just another different way of teaching the content of the science curriculum.
So forgive me, but where did that come, or how did that connect with the story?
The stars at Christmas.
You've got to follow a star.
Oh, well, yeah, I can see where it comes in with the Christmas story. I was just wondering whether there was any connection to Lola's story. Could it have had something to do with the lanterns?
Maybe, but it did talk about stars and planets somewhere.
So just at the end of part 1 of the story, that's why Lola was over the moon when her teacher chose her to be Mary in this year's procession. She was over the sun when the priest agreed that Don Pedro could be the donkey. And she was over the Milky Way just before the start of the story.
Thank you, Rob. I knew it was in there, but she couldn't find it. And I was like, that's so unlike me. Like, to just make up a bit of the story and just shove it in. Yes, it's because she was over the moon, over the sun, and over the Milky Way.
Gotcha. So it's expressing her joy, and that makes it a fantastic idea.
And how far away those places are. So she must have been really, really happy.
Excellent. Oh yeah, if you could measure your happiness in light years. Any more science from anyone?
I thought about it very similarly, but sound, because the donkey is braying and she's trying to work out where the donkey is. So talking about how we hear sound, thinking about echoes, thinking about an investigation. If the donkey had been louder, would she have found it quicker? Looking at what's in your ears, how it works, how it gets to your brain, how sound travels. There's a whole unit on sound for Key Stage 2 science.
Yeah, and the importance of being able to listen in stereo in order to pinpoint where things are.
So the last bit that I was thinking of is we could look at the section of the science curriculum that's all about materials. So obviously we've got the bridge made of wood.
Yeah.
We've got the lanterns that you couldn't make a lantern out of anything, because obviously if you're going to set it, if it's going to be a lantern that contains a flame, obviously we would need to make sure that the casing of the lantern would be suitable, would be fireproof or fire retardant, so they could do an experiment with which materials could we make the lanterns out of and which materials would be less suitable. And you could even
that sounds like a fun experiment.
Well, I was thinking as well, you could even challenge your older learners, so your year 5 and year 6, about those Chinese paper lanterns that are often used at weddings or at in lots of celebrations. Like, how do they actually work? And how do they not set themselves on fire? Like, is it the structure of it? Is it the shape? Is it how far away from the flame the paper is in the lantern? So, doing some experiments of, how does this actually work? You'd obviously have to get permission to send fire into the sky around your school. But actually thinking of how that actually works, because obviously it's the heat from the candle, the heat source, that enables the paper lantern to expand and then to be taken up into the air. When I was thinking about it, I was thinking, actually, how do they work and just not burn up? But I'm guessing the inventor of those might have had a few paper Chinese lanterns that actually did set on fire until they worked out.
No eyebrows left.
Yeah, no eyebrows. Until they worked out how far away everything needed to be successful. So I was thinking about making lanterns, repairing the bridge. Is wood the best material to use for a bridge? Wire bridges, looking at it could link into D&T, and later in your week or in your project week, what's the best material to build a bridge out of, and what's the best material to make a lantern from, and why?
I think that's plenty. Yeah, thank you very much for covering for Helen at the last minute there. Speaking of happiness in light years, then let's have our Christmas cracker joke. Are we going to get as many light years of joy from your Christmas cracker joke at the end of this episode, Rob?
Well, you might be able to measure it in nanometers rather than what was Father Christmas's favourite subject at school?
Oh, is this going to be science related?
Yes.
Okay, so what we got? We got physics, chemistry, or biology.
It's one of them.
Okay. I don't know, baurbology.
Chemistry, like a Christmas tree.
Oh, okay. Although chemistry and baurbology do go quite well together.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed that you even came up with a solution to that one.
That's sadly all we have time for in this episode, folks, and indeed this week. If you'd like to talk to us about anything you've heard in this podcast, or if there's a subject you are soon to teach that you'd like us to cover, you can find us on social media using @TeachHappily, or leave us a review using your favourite podcast app. Please also share this podcast with your colleagues and help us start a story-led revolution in classrooms around the world, so children everywhere can enjoy knowledge-rich learning in a way that's effective, memorable, and enjoyable all at the same time. We'll be back next week so Lola and Don Pedro can help us plan lessons in art, design and technology, music, languages, and geography. Right now, though, it only remains for us to say cheerio, and we hope to hear your story soon. So,
Cheerio! And we hope to hear your story soon.